Good morning, Unity. Looks like a somewhat slim crowd, although I think some other people pulling in, so that's good. But I know we got Festival of Light, a couple people sick, so we'll hold them in thought today. Let's go ahead, turn your iPhones off, your IMs on. Let's stand up and sing some songs, get some energy moving in this place. We all set? Oh boy, we definitely need the energy today. Okay. We will stand here together in this moment right now as we move on our way through this moment of power. In a circle of friends, knowing the power of choice, we lift each other up with one united voice. You and me, we are unity. You and me, we are unity. You and me, we are unity, unity. Unlimited strength in each other we see. Have faith in the wisdom that love can set us free. Release all the things that we no longer need. We imagine a life full of passion and zeal. You and me, we are unity. You and me, we are unity. You and me, we are unity, unity. We will stand here together in this moment right now as we move on our way through this moment of power. In our circle of friends, knowing the power of choice, we lift each other up with one united voice. You and me, we are unity. Mary Ellen and me, we are unity. Bill and me, we are unity, unity. One more time. You and me, we are unity. You and me, we are unity. You and me, we are unity, 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 unity. All right. So this door is open to you, Letty Watkins. No matter where you come from, no matter where you're going, here's a place where you can take comfort in the knowing that where you come, stay a while or just passing through, this door is open to you. Come and let's be silent. Come, let's share a hug. Come, let's pray together. Come, love and be loved. From the blissed out to the turned out, the pampered or the abused, this door is open to you. Come on in. Come on in. The God in us recognizes the God in you. Whether you're black or white, gay or straight, Christian, Buddhist or Jew, this door is open to you. If there's some kind of trouble or pain you're going through, know that you are not alone. Someone cares for you as the individualization of a divine point of view. This door is open to you. Come on in. Come on in. The God in us recognizes the God in you. Whether you're black or white, gay or straight, Christian, Buddhist or Jew, this door is open to you. Whether you're black or white, gay or straight, Christian, Buddhist or Jew, this door is open to you. All right, let's skip over some Karen Drucker. Let me hear you sing it this time. Wake up. Let's go. I want to hear you over my own voice. let there be peace. I am a stand for peace, let there be love. I am a stand for love, let there be joy. I am a stand for joy. We are making a new world now. Let freedom ring from every bell around this land. Let every voice be lifted, every woman, every man. Let us turn our hearts to joy. Walk together hand in hand. Raise each other up, it's time to take a stand. Let there be peace. I am a stand for peace. Let there be love. I am a stand for love. Let there be joy. I am a stand for joy. We are making a new world now. Let freedom ring from every bell around this land. Let every voice be lifted, every woman and every man. Let us turn our hearts to joy. Walk together hand in hand. Raise each other up, it's time to take a stand. Raise each other up, it's time to take a stand. All right, go ahead and have a seat. And if you will, you can close your eyes, join me in a moment of prayerful presence. Take some deep breaths. Welcome this moment. Today we come open for transformation, receptive, filled with love and gratitude. We await with bated breath for whatever shall be given to fill us, that we might be ready to receive it. Our hearts today are with those who are feeling a little under the weather. Our joy is with those who are representing us at the Festival of Light. All of us in different spaces coming together for one purpose. For whatever today brings, let there be gratitude always. Amen.
Welcome. Let's affirm our mission statement together. Okay, Unity in the Seven Hills is a vibrant, inclusive community that inspires individual spiritual growth through education, prayer, heart connection, and sacred service. And our vision statement. Centered in spirit, we see a world transformed by divine love, where innovative solutions are celebrated and all needs are met. And now for our Unity Principle of the Week. Each week we will state one of our 5 basic Unity principles. This week, our principle is number 2. Human beings are divine at their core and therefore inherently good. Now say that with me. Human beings are divine at their core and therefore inherently good. And now it's time for the daily word. And Fran Lassenby is going to read that for us.
Good morning, all, and God bless you. Today's word is balance. I honor life shifting rhythms, sometimes trying to balance my schedule, meet my obligations, and even find time for the things I enjoy can leave me scrambling to figure out how to fit it all in. Today I take my cue from nature and notice the rhythm of the seasons and the tide, the cycles of growth, and the order that underlies all things. I appreciate how seamlessly the natural world balances itself and restores itself to harmony. The gift of harmony and balance lives in me. I honor myself when I flow it instead of forcing my will upon it. I listen to my body's many signals. I rest when I'm tired, eat when I'm hungry, and socialize and seek solitude as I need to. As I care for myself, I find balance. And the scripture for today is, "For there is nothing better for people under the sun than to eat and drink and enjoy themselves." Ecclesiastes 8:15.
Thank you, Fran. Eat, drink, and be merry. I like that one. Now let us bless our youth together. You are a perfect child of God. God and I love you just the way you are, and wherever you are.
All right, let's sing This Bright Light of Mine. If you want to get on your feet, get that inner child out. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. To make sure I'm doing this in the right place and not skipping something here. critics who prophesize your pen. Keep your eyes open, chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin. And there's no telling who that is near. For the loser now will be later to win, for the time they are a-changing. Senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall. He who gets hurt will be he who has stalled. The battle outside raging will soon take your windows and straddle your walls. For the time they are a-changing. Mothers and fathers throughout the land, don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Get out of the new one if you can lend a hand, for the time they are a-changing. Line is drawn, the curse it is cast. Slow on now, will later be fast. Presence now, will later be past. The order is rapidly fading. And the first one now will later be last, for the times they are a-changing. I thought that'd be a warning not to practice too much. My fingers are bruised and I was playing through the pain. Okay. It is my honor today to introduce our speaker. Christian Bradley West is a creative professional with a background in fine art and exercise science. His art is included in the collections of the High Museum of Art, the Museum of Contemporary Art of Georgia, and the Sir Elton John Photography Collection, as well as numerous private and corporate collections. With an emphasis on spiritual expression, he has recently shifted his creative energy to writing and is in the process of completing 2 novels. You can find him most days posting funny spiritual memes, absolutely hilarious spiritual memes, on his Instagram account, The Country Clairvoyant, or In Nature Petting Moss. I know that very well. So everyone, let's put our hands together and welcome Christian Bradley West.
Good morning. All right, yeah, okay. I'm like, how close do I need to be? Yeah, so I like the times they are changing, because today I want to talk about change, or loss, impermanence, grief, happy things. We are in, of course, the season of harvest, so the fields are going fallow, as they would say, and we're turning the soil and reaping what we've sown all year. And I thought it was very interesting and synchronistic that Bonnie's newsletter, her little that came out the other day, talked about elimination. And so, should I put it up? All right, let's get this right. Does that work better? There we go. Oh, that's right, it was moved down, so it was there in the, anyway, okay, there we go, all right. So Bonnie's newsletter talked about elimination, or the letting go, which I don't think is an easy process. We make the assumption, it gets talked a lot about, especially in all communities, really, and all forms of spirituality. But I think that there's a lot of pieces to it, and the impact of change in our lives can be, including the potential compromises or sacrifices we have to make, or to move through to complete the changes, are remarkably nuanced. I won't get to all of them today. There's a lot, but we'll go through it. So there's a statement that says change is the only constant. I don't agree with this. Change is not the only constant. There's a deeper, more solid space in which the change occurs, and that's the space of the present moment. So there's not just change. So there's something that is kind of singular, and to me more constant, the eternal now, as it's been described, and in this space, the change happens. And if we look at it in the symbol of the cross, not necessarily the suffering of the cross, but just the perpendicular, which I like to describe it as the present moment. And then we've got what we perceive as the past and the future in the horizontal. But there's always the present moment. And within it holds the constant expression of things. So if we really want to contextualize change, it's part of the ever-present movement of expression in our universe. And the beingness, of course, that seems to hold it all together. So if you ask anyone close to me, though, despite my desire to create and to express myself continuously, they'll tell you that change is the biggest challenge for me. I just don't like it. And I don't think I'm alone here. I think there's a lot of us that, we hold on to any number of things, regardless of how dysfunctional they are, and go, no, this is my safety net. This is my safe space. This is where I want to be. And mostly change is just uncomfortable. Bottom line. And there's a lot of humans out there that say we have to leave our comfort zone. and I think research has shown this is not true, by the way. Research has shown we expand the comfort zone. So if we can engage with the change in a capacity that through exploration and curiosity, then we can expand that comfort zone. But we want to start where we feel safe. But we'll get into a little bit more of that later. But so when it's time to adapt and improvise or rewrite the script, this is where I struggle, that space. And I found a lot of people do working with humans over the years. And so what is the number one thing? Why? Attachment, right? It's that simple. And apparently for me, in the attachment, I always say I like to carry around dead bodies. That's kind of my thing, so to speak. Of the past, all the things, the dead bodies can be patterns or old relationships, romantic ones specifically. Usually, that's. But let's be honest here. Everything's relationship, right? I mean, everything. Right now, your butts are in relationship with the chairs. I'm in a relationship with you. Everything's relationship. But it seems that those romantic ones tend to be the hardest. And I become remarkably attached, and sometimes very quickly. And probably due to trauma, but we won't talk about that today. This isn't therapy. But as I've evolved through, the spiritual practice, which I define simply as being conscious, right? Just that's really all a spiritual practice is just providing more awareness in our day-to-day and really moment-to-moment activities. and sustained awareness, I realized that carrying around the attachment, the pattern of attachment, is its own pattern. But I'll say this. I've learned by carrying around the dead bodies that I am no necromancer. It's not coming back to life, right? We cannot resurrect what is done. And of course, we could further carry this into the Buddhist concept of attachment and aversion, right? Trying to deny what we don't like, the lack of pleasure, right? But I say aversion is its own attachment because we're attached to the pleasure, trying to get away from what we don't like, and go on to the next thing. So it's all the same. It's all attachment, and it speaks to something deeply embedded within our brains and our bodies, which is the survival mechanism of get away from that which is unsafe, right? No, the change is unsafe, right? It's unknown. We don't know. We want to know. We might feel it intuitively to some degree, but we ultimately just don't know. But so, again, the resisting of the change is something that I've experienced a lot within myself, but also I see within clients and many other humans on the planet, because, again, it's just scary. And what's scary about it? Well, it's scary because it's, change. That's it. Where am I going? What's it going to look like? I want solid ground. And this is where I constantly return back to the present moment, that in the midst of the perceived chaos, which I define as just the reorganization of a system, by the way. It's not necessarily a disorganization just for the sake of disorganization. When you move, there's chaos, but you're going somewhere with your chaos, right? It's packed up in boxes, so it's not necessarily disorganized, maybe a little. But in that space, we can always ground ourselves here. But there's a lot more going on. And you've probably heard of the whisper, the shout, the slap, where you have that intuitive voice in the whisper that says, okay, it's time to make a change. It's time to do something. It's time to do this. Well, and if you're not listening, then it gets louder, right? And then eventually you go into the slap. Well, in my experience, there's two other things, because I like to put my head in the sand. There's the kick in the ass or being dragged by the cosmic bus. So the slap wasn't enough, I needed something more to get me moving, and that's how I've worked with it. So part of my resistance comes from, there's a great quote I love by Zora Neale Hurston that says, "Death is the meanest moment in eternity," and part of me agrees with this. And so, because I've seen a lot of death, it's been, and maybe many of you have too, those that are watching and here today. But let's not narrow death just to death in the compartment of the death of a loved one or a loved animal or something like that. If you read Thoreau or you understand the symbols or archetypes, then you know when death shows up, it means change. That's it. Just change. And 1 year of my life, there was death after death. I mean, it was just, I was like, how much can one person take? And it was like the consistency of the sun. It was like, what's going to show up today? And it felt like this ritualization of engagement with death that I couldn't understand yet. It was interesting, speaking of Thoreau, the sun card kept coming up for me that year more than the death card, but there was plenty of death. So in the first week of 2018, I was off to a running start. I ended a 5-year relationship and moved out of our home. One of my grandmothers died, and a dog that had essentially adopted me. It was a neighbor's dog, and they were gone for certain reasons, and it began living with me. Sugar was her name. She was hit by a car and killed. And later in the year, still processing the death of the relationship, I'd lose an ex-partner to a massive heart attack. In the same week, a book deal that I had that had been on the table for a year, that I'd been working with an editor with a major publisher, was taken off the table, so that would die. And the deaths didn't stop. My truck died. My computer died. My landlord decided that she wanted to move into the house I was living in when my lease was up. So, and it was a beautiful house by a lake, and I did not want to move. I had to grieve the leaving of that place. I'd gone there to heal. I had a tooth abscess, and it almost killed me. literally. And to add to the seismic grief, I didn't have money to replace the things that I had lost. Now, this isn't the woe is me Olympics. I don't tell you this to go, oh, it's so horrible and sad. I say this in a relational way, to say that I've experienced a lot of change, and sometimes in a very condensed space, as many of us have, and especially now, due to the pandemic, the changes in climate and the economy, and many other things sweeping the globe right now. The potential, it seems like war is constantly on our doorstep. It's like it never left. And there's a tweet that I love, by the way, that you all might relate to right now, that said, I used to think adulthood was one crisis after another. I was wrong. It's multiple crises, concurrently, all at once, all the time, forever. And sometimes it feels like this. I want to remind you all, though, that the word crisis, the root of the word crisis is choice. So it's just a fork in the road, right? There's always a choice to be made in life, every moment of the day, you know? Which, of course, requires change. Always. You're leaving one thing to move on to the next thing. Sometimes it's very small what you're going to eat. Sometimes it's, do I leave this relationship? Sometimes it's taken from us in the version of losing a job, right? Or the death of someone that we are deeply attached and connected to. So one of change's constant companions is grief. So I feel like we can't talk about change without encapsulating it within the space of grief and the suffering that may follow. A side note, my background is in exercise science, so I still approach many things as science. And current research, so I look at current research all the time, and current research shows that grief activates parts of our brain involved in longing. So it's essentially when something leaves us, when there's a change, and oftentimes we feel like we don't have a choice. So it's absent in the physical. It's not necessarily absent within us, right? So it's like there's a glass of water that we can't drink that's living within us, you know, which points to what I call the perception of lack, something that we don't have that we want. So the change often takes something away or moves something or, you know, reorients things. And so our brain says that thing should still be there. It shoulds on us. Our brain loves to should on us, by the way. And even if that thing is dysfunctional and unhealthy, right? Even if that or toxic in some way, it doesn't matter. The brain still says, wait, I'm wired for this. I'm wired for this. And so from the smallest of things to the biggest of things, we may feel that sense of longing for it. And I find the most challenging thing to give up is the patterns, you know, that are associated with our constant processing of our life that comes from the past. So, yeah, that is really what grief is. I love the book. I don't know if you've not read it, you might want to. It's beautifully written. It's lyrical, by Francis Weller. In his book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, Rituals of Renewal and the Sacred Work of Grief, says at times grief invites us. I love that, invites us, because I feel like life is an invitation. Every moment is an invitation for something. It says at times grief invites us into a terrain that reduces us to our most naked self. Ooh, that vulnerability, right? Which I have found we cannot move into the state of availability without first feeling the fear of that threat, of the new, of the different. And so it says, we find it hard to meet the day, sometimes to accomplish the smallest of tasks, to tolerate the greetings of others. We feel estranged from the world and only marginally able to navigate the necessities of eating, sleeping, and self-care. This was me the year that everything died, right? Some other presence takes over in times of intense grief, and we are humbled, brought to our knees, and I was definitely brought to my knees. We live close to the ground. The gravity of sorrow felt deep in our bones. I found in my experience that working with clients and in myself that the diagnosis of depression is actually a low-grade chronic grief that many experience. And it can be related to many things. Even I found what's so fascinating is my clients will come to me at times where things are changing, always. And they're ready to go through an upgrade. Something's ready to shift. And sometimes the grief that they feel is that they didn't get to express something from their childhood. Something they wanted to explore, whether they were interested in poetry and they're like, why do you want to do that? Or I want to paint or do that. And so they set it to the side and they went and became a lawyer. Or an accountant, because that's what mom and dad wanted them to do. So I find that the grief can be, they can hold that within them. So we bring it to the surface and we look at it because it's time for a change, right? They're feeling it. There's the whisper, right? So they come to me when there's the whisper before they get the being dragged by the cosmic bus. So let's briefly, just very quickly, run through the stages of grief. I didn't bring my little thing up, so I hope I don't go over until I watch the time. So I'm going to try and zoom through some things. But let's just go shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. It's been expanded. Again, there's great research in this, but it comes back over and over again to the longing and the not having and the perceived lack and the shoulding of it all. And further research has included a last part of the acceptance, which is the meaning. I struggle with the anger and the acceptance part. And in my clients, I found that's the same too, because the anger comes from the shoulding, right? I should have this. And then the acceptance, because my survival brain says, well, I need this to survive. I should have this. That 5-year relationship, my partner at the time, I was essentially, my living expenses, everything was very comfortable. So I knew leaving him was going to involve me financially struggling. So I knew that was the scary part, was how am I going to make this work? And so for years, I was like, well, if I would have just stayed with him, I could have gotten a new computer. I would have done this. I would have done that, even though, like I said, it was dysfunctional. It was toxic. So that was my trade-off, right? Which seems to be, there's still oftentimes in the choices and the change, there appears to be the lesser of two evils. But there's the opportunity, of course, in that space for great and grand transformation. But before we talk about that, I'm going to say that I have found that the process of grieving is by no means linear, right? As they say, it's a spiral. And as Bonnie once told me recently, I really liked, she said this, that it's a tilted spiral. So sometimes you go down and then you go up. So it's not like this, right? It's not like the labyrinth where, it appears on flat ground. It's a tilted labyrinth as well. And so I found that the pain of grief conceals itself in denial, which is one of the parts of grief. And to deny our grief is to deny our nature. And we're, we hide death, especially in this country. I think the Western world does that. Growth, constant growth. We need constant growth. But this forces sorrow, pain, fear, and perceived weakness, that vulnerability, into the underworld, where they fester and mutate into contorted expressions of themselves, often coated in the mantle of shame. The emotion anger has been the most challenging for me because, well, it's just not nice, right? It's not polite. So there was shame around feeling angry, which comes from some very some deep wounding from childhood. But, again, we won't get into all of that. But I found that the depression and the anger can go hand in hand as well. So to ignore the anger and the suppression of anger, again, because it can also feel very violent for us. But it's also remarkably motivating. If you experience trauma, grief, all of these stages can become, and the emotions that come with it can be very overwhelming. But we cannot deny ourselves the dignity of our feelings and what's going on within us at any given point in time. I have found that's really the path to healing is going, okay, I feel this way. It's that simple. It's really like just going, okay, I feel this way. Why do I feel this way? What's going on with me? And the cadence of the soul is rooted in the soul of nature and the rhythms of the seasons. So in the change, grief is a part of it. There's a oracle deck I read, and there's the Lady of the Harvest. And she's, very goddess-like, very round, like Venus of Willendorf. And she is also the card of grief. So there's the dichotomy, right? We get something while also having to leave something in the past. So I say to become available to all the emotions that arise in any process is to be in sync with the weather of our internal world. And this requires unyielding honesty with ourselves and the state of those inner worlds. So, how do we deal with the changes in our lives that sometimes leave an empty space, or that perceived empty space? Or sometimes we're not even grieving something we've lost already. Sometimes we future grieve, because that's how, complex our brains are. Let me future grieve what's going on in this. Let me anticipate the death of this. I do this constantly, especially in those romantic relationships, because, well, as a treat, Obviously in a remarkably dysfunctional way, to a degree. Research also shows that people that have accepted the possibility of death, who recognize it, who understand it, at least who can contextualize it, and who can contextualize the grief, have more gratitude. And I think this is remarkable. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's something out in California where they basically go and you die. Everything dies. You go through this whole workshop where you just are connected to death. And everyone who came out of it, everyone who's been through it feels a sense of transcendence over the death, but also in the embracing of the death. So it's, there's a paradox of embracing the grief and the death and then coming out on the other side with more gratitude. And it just seems, again, counter logic. Because most of us fall within the pit when things change. It's like, the freak out, the whatever, all the grief, all those things. So, keeping death close, keeping the change close, knowing it's always happening, right? The weather's always changing, there's always something different. It can alleviate some of the grief. I won't get into the depth of gratitude research in this talk today for brevity, but look it up. There's some interesting new things coming out about it, and the gratitude lists are not always the best way of developing it within us. There's a lot of new things that are coming out. So, and I think in the state of gratitude, I don't like just leaving gratitude on the table and say, oh, you should just be grateful. You should be grateful in your grief. Because sometimes I'm not grateful in my grief and in the change. I'm not grateful that I lost my job initially. The context comes later. Zora Neale Hurston also said, that last part of meaning. She said there are years that ask questions and years that answer. And sometimes there are moments that ask questions and answer. Sometimes there are days, sometimes there are weeks. So sometimes it comes very quickly. So we don't want to bypass, again, the emotions. We don't want to do all of that. We want to ask our questions. We want to get inquisitive. We want to get curious about what's going on inside of you in the midst of the change, because, again, there's a lot of it going on. I think, it's sweeping the globe in a way that it hasn't in a while. So, again, one of the scariest parts of change is that it's change. It's just the way it is, right? Embarking into the unknown, leaving the familiar. But what if we're transcending the unfamiliar, is my question, alchemizing it? The change gives us the manure needed to plant the seeds, and we're given the seeds too. So we might feel, sometimes especially in that year, felt covered in manure. I was just walking in it. It was just everywhere. It was just and I was like, when do I get to plant the seeds? When do I get to make the conscious change? Because in feeling like I didn't have a choice in a lot of the things going on in my life, I decided to make a choice. And this is what accelerated the process of moving forward in this state where I was constantly bombarded with the impermanence of life. And so grief holds within it the regeneration and the transformation. The change holds within it. If you draw a line on a circle and you call it an end, as I say, it's also the beginning. It's all the same. We cannot separate them. So I say, when things change, especially if you lose a loved one, there's always the absence. My grandfather passed, many years ago. I was 27, and I remember I was living in Atlanta, and I came up here for work, and I, for the first time in my life, I walked into my grandparents' house, and it was still. It was quiet. No one was there to greet me for the first time ever in my entire life. And while I say that, the alarm clock in my grandfather's room did go off within 5 minutes of me being there. So I say he was still there to greet me in some capacity. But even so, I had never walked into my grandparents' house and it wasn't a whirlwind of greeting. People were always there. There was always food. There was all there. And I felt the absence in such a palpable way I had never felt in my entire life. But I had already done the grievings. There wasn't the sadness, but there was the absence. So when something goes away, there is the absence. And the absence never goes away. There will never be another grandfather. But I have found, so again, the change is difficult. There's a lot going on. But let's talk about the smaller changes. I have even struggled with changing things creatively, okay? So I had a book idea. And this summer, I had a publisher approach me, and I was so excited and so giddy, and let myself feel the joy of it, right? And so I submitted a proposal to him that I had already been working on, and he said, "Oh, this sounds like everything else out there." I was like, "Oh," because I thought I was gonna write the next Power of Now or some junk like that, right? Like a new earth, like, I'm gonna do it. And then he said, "I want it dripping with Christian." And I was like, oh, but all my notes, all my outline, years worth of journals, like, what does that mean, dripping with Christian? So in the moment I paused and I said, okay, I need to pause. I need to tune into the whispers, right? And what I've learned is a clenched fist cannot receive, right? So I wanted to open up to the information. So I opened the hand and said, okay, how do you want to come through me, book? Which I had never asked before at a creative process. And I had, it was one of those aha moments. And so I did it. I let it drip with Christian and realized I needed to put more of myself into it. So it had to change. It had to change. But I've been learning to consciously change, right? To go into it. So I went into it. And I didn't let it become so special either, because there was a whole story around how special it is with many of our creative projects, even if we have children, right? They're special. And so we worked on it for a couple months with him, and then he got back to me and said, well, we've decided over the next 2 years we're not publishing as many books. So my book came off the table. So another book deal dead. And change. More change. No, I don't want to do this. So I wasn't as devastated as the one previous. And so that day, synchronistically, I did take a drive to Alta Vista, and I took the back roads because that's how I roll, and I processed, and I said, I got still, and I went into meditation, and I allowed for the information to come, and a little voice showed up in my head and said, has the mission changed? Has the mission changed? Okay, another book deal done for now. And I said, well, what is the damn mission? It's like, what do you mean? What's the mission? And so I had to define that first. And so for me, it's whatever I have, whatever information, whatever wisdom, whatever creative things I have to give the world. That's the mission. Show up with all my pieces. Dripping with Christian, as the editor said. And to continue. And so my best advice in all of change is to continue, to keep going. And part of that is recognizing the emotions, recognizing how we're feeling, recognizing where we are, recognizing all the pieces, because oftentimes we feel in pieces when things are shifting. And to do it without expecting anything. Remember, they say that an expectation is just a grievance waiting to happen, and we don't need more grief in our life. So we might want to manage those expectations. And I want to say, in the years that answer, because I'm in that space now. After all the death in 2018, and of course then COVID hit, shortly thereafter, and all those things, the meaning will not come right away. which is to say the context of the changes may not be obvious until they're obvious. So I'm seeing the obvious thing now. In the first book deal that dropped, the book wasn't ready. It wasn't. It wasn't what I wanted it to be. And I think in this case, the editor in the publishing house was not ready for me to be as loud as I want to be in this next book. And I'm funny and can be very crass, and I don't know if the publishing house is ready for all of that, honestly. And I was okay with that. I was okay with that. So I found within the acceptance comes the meaning, the lesson, the understanding, but it comes when it comes. We cannot force the river, as they say. And so for me, once I accepted the corpses were in fact dead, and I was indeed no necromancer, I could move on. But let's face it, in the midst of the moving, in the midst of the recognizing what was happening, I was moving. Sometimes it felt like I was again in a swamp and could only take one step every moment. Well, really every day, maybe, or whatever, maybe every week. But eventually I got faster. And looking beyond what I had lost to what I could create. And for me, moving within the change was giving up what I thought I had to control. With the book, I had to give up the control, right? Okay, I can't write it this way. I'm part of a different generation. There's people are looking for something different now. Those old books I read and all the things that inspired me when I was younger, it's different now. So something else needs to come through me. So I say, look at what you think you can control and recognize the control as fear within this. And instead work with the circumstance through the lens of what you can create. And the baseline of my transcendence in everything is my creative ability. And we're all creative because we all have the ability to choose. And every choice we make is creating something from within, to choose peace within us, to address the inner conflict, and how that translates into our outer world. And so this is where the transformation happens, obviously. And what we are willing to release and make room for in the process of our contribution to ourselves and those around us. Because our creative act becomes the contribution. And so what's pulled me through everything in my life is, what do I have to offer? So I leave that with you now. And ask you, what do you have to offer? Because I know you have things to offer. Do we begin the meditation? Okay. So there it is. So I figured we'd do a guided meditation. I am not sure how you normally do the meditation. I come on Thursdays, or attempt to many times. And I want to remind you that meditation is an allowance. So when I was driving and I asked the question, I allowed for the answer. It's an observation, to allow things as they are, to observe without comment, without judgment. So let's do one around change, but a conscious change. See yourself in your car, or any vehicle. If you want to be in a horse and buggy, go for it. I don't care. But be in something that's going to move you forward. And look behind you. What do you see? What's there? There's something to leave. There's something to eliminate. There's something to let go of. It's time. I feel a lot of emotion saying this. Let the emotions arise within you and watch them. This thing you're ready to leave in your past. Because remember, we are not necromancers, so we're not bringing it back to life. Now turn and look ahead of you. The sun illuminates your path. It is bright, it is crisp, it is warm. You are ready. you start the car or get your horse and buggy ready and watch what you're leaving behind get smaller and smaller. So simultaneously you're moving on the road, but you see in the rear view mirror that thing getting smaller and smaller, while the sun gets brighter and brighter. Eventually the thing in your past is a pinpoint on the horizon, and you keep moving, you keep going forward until it vanishes and you are covered in light. Who in the light, see it come all around you, see it come from within you. And take a deep breath and inhale the light. Allow it to fill your lungs, course through your veins. This is the newness. This is the creativity. This is the joy. And as you come out of the meditation, take another deep breath and feel your body radiate with the light. Thank you all for letting me be here today. I'm very grateful.
Light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. And the presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever I am, God is. Wherever I am, God is. Wherever I am, God is, and all is well. Light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power
Hey, much better. Oh, thank you. I was worried about where we were going to put all these offerings that we're bringing forth because we are so abundant. Let us now affirm our abundance. Unity in the seven hills is abundantly blessed. Creative people are drawn to us. Divine ideas flow through us. Financial resources bless us. And we accomplish mighty works together. And with that abundance, it's time to share our blessings. This month, we're tithing to support the Humane Society.
No, I think we're now on to Lynchburg Grows, I
Oh,
believe. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. It's November. It's a new month. Lynchburg Grows. And in addition to tithing to our greater unity family.
And just to let you know, I think those ties to Lynchburg Grows are going towards making a Thanksgiving basket for a needy family, I believe. So.
Oh, good. How timely. Okay, now this month, oh yeah, we're doing that. There are 4 ways to give. PayPal, Zelle, check, or cash. And as our greeter directs your row to go, place any gifts in the basket, we have a basket now, in the basket up front, and then join the circle around the sanctuary. If all you have to give today is love, bless our basket. Now let's sing Something Wonderful.
Something wonderful is happening to me right here, right now. I can feel it in my body, I can feel it in my soul, I can feel it in my heart, and it won't let go, no it won't let go, all this love inside. We can let it shine. Something wonderful is happening to me right here, right now. I can feel it in my body, I can feel it in my soul, I can feel it in my heart, and it won't let go, no it won't let go, all this love inside. We can let it shine, yes we can, something wonderful. We all good to move around? We're making a smaller circle, huh? All right, let's go ahead and join in with the blessing of the gifts. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. United in mind, body, and spirit, I dedicate these gifts as they grow to bless our community, our neighborhood, and our world. Thank you for joining us today. A calendar of events is available at unityinthesevenhills.org. Here are some important and upcoming items, starting with, it's a new month. Whose birthdays do we have? Anyone? 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 No one? No? Oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Well, that's for the people who couldn't make it, whose birthdays there are. I know there's a couple of them here. Let's go ahead and sing happy birthday to them. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, we love you. Happy birthday to you. All right, let's move on. No one here's got a birthday. All right. Giving Tuesday is on November 29th this year. Look to our giving page on the website for ways to give, and keep an eye on our social media as the date draws close. And you'll find also a link to our Flower Power fundraiser on the website on that giving page. Visit our booth at the 13th Annual Festival of Light. We will be there today until 5 p.m. If you weren't able to make it, able to make it yesterday, admission for one day is only $5. And from what I hear, they had like 300 people go yesterday. It was apparently a pretty big event. Sign-up sheet is in the back for our annual Thanksgiving dinner, or should we say Friendsgiving. Let us be your family. If you are online but wish to participate, contact the office to get signed up. We need at least 10 people to make this happen. Namaste Cafe Open Mic is this Thursday, November 10th at 7 p.m. Get your talents ready and come share some coffee with us as we celebrate our creative potential. And let me tell you, I got some special guests lined up, and I'm sure Daniel probably has some people, so this is not one you want to miss. It's going to be a pretty big one. Your prayer chaplain today, I guess, is me, because I'm the only one that's here. So it's me. I'll be around to hold space with you in case there's anything you need some prayers for. Big thank you to our guest speaker, Christian. Let's hear it. And we're about to close with a peace song and then gather downstairs for coffee. Today, potluck. But before we do, if you're watching at home, like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell icon to know when we're going live again or anytime we upload anything. And let's go ahead and sing the peace song. Yes, there is peace on earth, and yes, it begins with me. Yes, there is peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, united all are we. Yes, we walk with each other in perfect harmony. Yes, this is the moment now. With every step I take, yes, this is my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace.